two things must be true. You're very lucky or you need to get out more. On this program, we share stories of life and living. We compare notes. We discover commonalities. We accept that life is a glorious, heartbreaking thing, and we embrace and celebrate all of it. Take the ride with us. We're glad you're here. Now, here's your host, Mark O'Brien.
Welcome indeed, and thank you for being here. We are coming to you live today, again, and as always, from world headquarters in Middletown, Connecticut, home of the powerlifter Floyd McGillicuddy. Floyd is presently in Paris as part of the U.S. Olympic team, and tomorrow he'll be competing in the manhole cover tiddlywinks. I have no idea if NBC will pick that up, but I hope so. Wow. I am very grateful to be able to introduce to you my guest today. His name is Jeffrey Johnston. He's got just an incredible story. Welcome, Jeff. I think it's fair to say that you've experienced some things that most of us probably fear primally. And among those things would be the loss of your son, Seth, in 2016, the confrontation of your own addictions and demons, and the loss of your wife, Prudence, 5 years later in 2021. I can't imagine that. Can you share a little bit of what that might have been like?
I can, and I'm honored to be here, Mark. This is, I was really excited about this conversation we're going to have for the last couple of weeks. Had a chance to check out what you do and admire your work and how you bring people together. And there's just something about these conversations that are needed today. Yes. There's so much out there that's easy to get caught up in with fear and scarcity and all the negative self-talk and the negative things we see in the media. And then at the same time, but there's so many great things going on right in front of us that we often miss. So, in my case, it's just my story. And this is where I like to kind of preface this is that, obviously these are two people having a conversation, but there's a lot of people watching and listening here that are going to be able to relate very well to what I'm saying. And there's some that aren't, but in their own life, there's a story that's very similar. So I think it's careful to, when we compare, the successes of people, we have to be careful about comparing grief. And so although my stories starts off, with a lot of grief, a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, it's evolved into this fantastic, wonderful, beautiful place that I'm at now at this stage of my life where I am so grateful every day for what I have and not burdened with pain from what I don't have anymore. And it takes a lot for me to stay in this lane. And we could talk about some of the mishaps and some of the times I fell off the horse here, but I'm back on it, ready to go. And I'm super excited for this conversation today. And wherever you want to start, I think we'll cover everything we want to talk about eventually, but we may zigzag back and forth. But wherever you want to start, I can start in with what you think fits.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm actually going to start with something that you just said, which just strikes me as so remarkably humble. You said, it's just my story. Man, for a gentleman with a story like yours, that's remarkably humble. And as I was thinking about this program, I was thinking about something that Marcel Proust said, which is, we are healed of a suffering only by experiencing it to the full. And it seems to me that you have shied away from nothing. And you also just made another remark about periodically falling off the horse. What do you mean by that?
Giving yourself grace and compassion and the opportunity to learn from, as I tell when I speak to people, I like to talk about the fear of failure. You talked a little bit before we jumped on here about fear and how, we're burdened with making mistakes. We're worried about failing. And I used to tell my boys, and now when I speak around the country, I always say, it's really only truly cemented as a mistake if nothing is learned. So you fall off the horse, you don't want to stay off the horse. You got to get back on it. And so you get back on it. You fall off again, you get back on it. And there's so many just like simple metaphors or analogies that we even use with kids today that as adults we seem to somehow have misplaced or outgrown, which is really unfortunate because some of the simplest concepts can guide us through whatever challenges we have through our life. And, I'll talk about some of the things that occurred in my life. And when I talk to people around the country, Mark, I always leave them with this question, and I'll this is how I end my talks, but I'm going to start with our conversation today is, ask yourself this question, and then how you answer this question will really frame and dictate the quality of the rest of your life. This is a big, big question. And here it is. So your people that are watching and listening are wondering, what nugget to pull out of this conversation. Here's a good one. Do things happen to you or do things happen for you? And what I mean by that is, do you look at events in your life as opportunistic, as like a victor mindset? Or do you look at situations or events that occur in your life as a victim, which is more sympathy and pity? And I call that the bitter road. The other road's called the better road. And again, this is not anything that Jeff Johnston created. None of us have any original ideas anymore. I mean, I read about Stoicism back in college. Obviously, I've dealt with, some things that some people haven't, but there's things that many people have dealt with that I haven't. And so that's what I mean earlier about my story. But there has to be stories in these things, or what's the purpose of having any of these experiences if you can't learn something from them? Yeah. And that's probably what's kept me above ground, to be honest with you, is my ability to be fairly pragmatic, but also look at, it's hard to say, things like death as being an opportunity to become better. It's easy for me now to say after all these years what happened in my life. But the reality is, Mark, I work hard at this every day, and I can talk about some of the things I do every day that I don't deviate from, that I think could help your listeners and followers in navigating through what life throws at them. I'd be happy to share some things that I do every day that I didn't do prior to these things happening in my life.
Okay, I would very much like to come back to those things.
Yeah.
I'll make myself a note about that. One of the things I want to ask you about, let me just make this note. My wife and I happen to know people who've lost children to drug overdoses. And it seems fairly consistent that they will say, but he never did that. But he wasn't using drugs. And even from the outside, and I don't want to sound judgmental about this, but in knowing sometimes how that child lived, seemed fairly evident. Did you experience that with Seth? Was it at least a temptation for you to deny that he had been doing that?
No. The manner of Seth's death, I don't spend a lot of time on. I focus on the quality of the life that he had prior, and that's where my attention lies. And I'm not going to lie, I'd never heard of fentanyl. Seth was, and I did a lot of thinking about this, Mark, over the years, because I get asked by a lot of parents. They come up afterwards and they say, because I can see they're concerned. They hear that our son died, and they're always like, "Wow, did you have any signs? Were there any signals?" And I know they're asking me that because they're thinking of their child that's not gone yet, and they're like, "How can I learn from Jeff? Were there signs?" And I always say, "Yeah, there were." And for me, it started at 15 years old when Seth was given Strattera for, of all things, this ridiculous label we put on humans called attention deficit. It's a scam. It's a farce. It's not needed. It's unnecessary. And I have it. I've learned through many ways to calm it down. And I talk about this in a little bit because I think it's important, because I think all of us have on the spectrum, whether it's a little bit of autism, a little bit of attention deficit, a little bit of bipolar, manic depression, whatever labels Big Pharma wants to sell to us, we don't have to obligate ourselves to believing these narratives. So I fell for the trick. The teachers at his conferences were saying, hey, Seth's not paying attention. He's looking out the window. He's disruptive. And I'm like, what 15-year-old male isn't? Now I say that, Mark, but at the time I'm like, oh yeah, he's got problems. Let's take him to the doctor. Now I'm not throwing doctors under the bus. My dad's a doctor, so it's not my lane. But I did what every parent does. I was running an investment firm. I was traveling the country. I was making money, married, 2 other boys, coaching. I was golfing every day. I mean, I felt, okay, I'm not an expert in this attention deficit thing. And the teachers are telling me my son is not paying attention. So I took him to a doctor. And that's where all hell broke loose. That's where I believe this thing started with my son. He was given Adderall the next year. And that just led into explorations with marijuana and alcohol, which a lot of kids go through. And then it was drunk driving, breaking and entering. And then it was cocaine. And then it was prison. And then he was released. And within 2 months, he was dead from fentanyl. So from 16 to 23, that's the story of Seth. But in between, there's last second shots in basketball games. There's beautiful music he wrote. There's this really funny young kid. And that's where my attention lies. And when I started down this advocacy journey, I got called to go speak at high schools and colleges and be on shows and stuff. And I tell you, Mark, I was angry fentanyl dad. I was angry fentanyl dad. I was attracted to this toxic, poisonous drug called vulnerability that became a negative addiction in my life. Is I felt I needed to go out and yell at kids not to do drugs or they're going to die. You show me the hope, love, and inspiration in that message. There isn't any. So I would go to a school packed with kids and I would show pictures of Seth and I'd cry and I'd hit my fist and I'd say, don't do drugs and blah, blah, blah. And I'd get to my car afterwards and I'd just start crying. And I'm thinking, man, nobody's going to listen to me. You don't change behavior by scaring people. You change them by inspiring them. So I thought, I got to change my message. And so after about a year of doing that, I decided I wasn't going to do that anymore. And now my whole mission, my life's purpose is to inspire young adults to make better choices with their mental wellness through love, hope, and inspiration. And that's an easy, great road to be on. The other one's just too toxic for me.
You said something earlier about failure, and you said you can only consider an experience to have been a failure if you didn't learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you said that, I wanted to ask, but I didn't want to interrupt you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think another criterion in that evaluation is change? Meaning, if you do something unsuccessful, I don't want to go so far as to call it a failure, and you learn from it, doesn't it most often necessitate a change of some kind?
Yeah, it became a whole chapter in my book called The Evolution of Self. And it's this adaptation or process of knowing that you never stay the same. And this is a illusion with most people, is that you think you're the same. But even since you and I started talking just 13 minutes ago, we've both evolved.
Yeah.
Now, I've gotten a little better. You've gotten a little better. I've got a little more love in my heart. I'm ready to go out and do more good in the world just by meeting you. And, so I think there's this evolutionary process that we all go through that we talk about evolution over periods of long time frames, but we evolve minute by minute, but you don't see it because it's so gradual. But it's the most beautiful part of evolution, because that's when you can really sit in and really be present in what's going on with your life. And I was not this guy. You're listening to me now thinking, man, where's this guy getting this stuff from? Well, I've really made a commitment when Seth died that I needed to do things to get my life in order. And so there was this process I went through of my own personal growth and evolution. And, prior to Seth dying, I'll go back a little bit so I can give some context here. But, I was an alcoholic since about 17 years old, all the way from high school. And I was like a 5-6 day a week drinker. So I was what was called a functional alcoholic. So I could go to work. I started and, grew a very successful wealth management firm here in Cedar Rapids, and we were managing about $800 million. I had 9 employees, 7 staff. And so I was happily married. Everything's going along really good. But like most families, or many families, behind the scenes, there were these cracks in the castle. And one of them was our son was struggling with addiction. And then I had my own issues, and so did my wife, but they weren't problems until they became what? A problem. That's how most things happen. That's why most people are in denial, because sure, you don't have a problem yet, but you will if you're on that road long enough. And so Seth died. I told my business partner I needed to stay home for a year and a half, get my stuff together, help my wife, and my other 2 boys were only 13 and 15 at that time, Mark. But what I did is I stayed home and drank 7 days a week for a year and a half. So I went from 5 to 6 days a week to 7 days a week, multiple times during the day. So drink, pass out, drink. I got up to almost 200 pounds. And at 52 years old, I looked in the mirror, and this is honest God's truth. I looked in the mirror and just said, dude, it's time. Mirror can't lie. You can lie to everybody else, but you can't lie to the mirror. And so I was looking in the mirror and I'm going, dude, what are you doing? I looked over in the corner of my eye. My wife's really struggling. She was 9 years younger than me, but now she looked 9 years older than me. And grief is just so hard. And, my advocacy, I thought, was going to help me. And my wife really didn't want to get into advocacy. She didn't want to talk about Seth. None of that stuff was, I wanted to be the one that was out there trying to change lives. And by talking about Seth, I never wanted him to die. He only dies if I stop talking about him. That was my mindset.
Ooh, wow.
So I didn't want him to die. I still don't want him to die. I talk about him every single day. And I always will. And so I looked in the mirror and said, I'm done. And I quit. I've never had a drop of alcohol since. And I don't call myself sober. That implies I'm in some mythical fight. I just don't drink. It's not that complicated. We overcomplicate things so much. And if I drank, I wouldn't torture myself. I would say, you know what? I drank. I'll decide tomorrow. It's like, but we play these games and we just punish ourselves, and we just, and then, or we over celebrate. We get overconfident. I've learned just to really stay in the flow state, stay in my zone, And I thought me quitting would really help my wife. And, the rest of the story, June 29th, 2021, the age of 46, my wife died of alcoholism, married 21 years. Yesterday was her birthday, by the way, Mark. She'd have been 50. And it was a beautiful day. I cried, but the weight of my tears are filled with great gratitude and joy and happiness and peace, and not pain, suffering, and sorrow and anger and hatred. It's just, I've melted that away. And I can tell you how I did it. I do have things I do every day that I'd like to share. I think could help people, but
Please do.
Yeah. I'm just like, Seth died at 23. He could have died at 15. He could have died at 2. My wife died at 46. She could have died at 40. She could have died at 22. Yeah. Sucks. They're not here, but man, I had great times with them. Man, I'm so grateful to have them, and I got this, when Seth died, 3 weeks after he died, his daughter was born. So I got this wonderful gift. Her name is Brighton, and she's 7.5. And she's like, what a name. It's like, I'm not being punished for anything I did. I'm being rewarded right now. And that's how I look at it. Now, do I cry? Yeah, man, it hurts. I'm in a fetal position 5 days a week, but I lean into it. It's like my mental health workout. It's like going to the gym. I feel it coming. I don't fight it. My dog comes over, lays on my lap. I'm like, okay, let's go.
You said a little while ago that we've both grown in these few minutes that we've been talking.
Mm-hmm.
And this occurred to me. I love what you said about evolution. I used to think a lot about the phrase defining moment. And I always, for the longest time, I believed the only way that we could identify, or that we would ever identify, so-called defining moments was in hindsight.
Yeah, 100%.
We could yeah, that's when that changed. But you've completely changed my mind about that in less than 20 minutes. Because if we are aware of the fact that we're evolving, and of course we are, then we have the opportunity to change at any and every moment, in every conversation, with every person that we meet. It's so remarkable, and it's all about perspective. And you said before we even went on the air, you said the word vulnerability. And if we're not willing to be vulnerable, we really do need to lower our expectations, because that kind of openness is the only way that we're going to be able to learn and change. And man.
Yeah, I will say this, because I know we're going to go into a break here, and this is a good way to kind of go into that, is the day that Seth died, the boys were there. They're 13 and 15. My wife's over to my right. And I just told them that their brother had died. And I knew, Mark, that this is like that I'm a competitor. I played 2 sports in college. It's like, I'm 58 now, so I don't have a lot of more things I'm really competitive in, but I'm like, I had this halftime speech thing going in my head. He's like, I got to say something impactful. So here's what I said to the boys. I said, boys, we have one of 2 roads to go down. We have one road of anger, despair, and hatred, and we'll be alcoholics and addicts ourselves. Or we have a road of inspiration and motivation. And this can be the single greatest event in our life to make a difference in the lives of others. I ask you to join me. I'm on the second road. And that's how I presented. It became a chapter in my book, and it really formed that whole idea, living undeterred, better, not bitter, which is what my keynote talk is called. And I don't know where it came from. I mean, I'm secular, so I can't really attribute it to a celestial being in the clouds, but it came from somewhere, and it was authentic, and I meant it, and it worked.
Okay. Yes, that is a perfect segue. And I will just leave this segment by saying, and if you had asked me 5 years ago if I would ever consider this, I would have laughed. Last week, I had what's called an Akashic reading. And it's essentially a reading by someone who's learned in these things of your soul record. And I have since come to very much believe. You just said to me, I don't know where that came from. All of the things that I might otherwise have attributed to creativity. Oh, I'm a creative guy. It's all channeled, and it's all coming from somewhere else. And that's part of vulnerability. If we're open to that, we'll receive it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're going to take a 3-minute commercial break, and we will be back right thereafter. Thank you.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life, from any circumstances, a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
Ever wonder what it's like to have your own radio show? Well, wonder no longer, because you can dip into the radio airwaves by being host for the day on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network. It's a fabulous way to get your radio feet wet. It's an opportunity to market your business, modality, or book. have a guest, mention a sponsor, and take callers. Or you may want to facilitate a lesson by going solo. It's up to you. Listeners can be online, mobile, in cars with Bluetooth, or listen through Amazon's Echo by asking, Alexa, play Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. For more details, go to dreamvision7radio.com and click on Host for the Day.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brands, distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com, or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dream Vision 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to dreamvision7radio.com.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Welcome back to the program, everyone. I'm so glad you're here with us today, and I'm so glad that you, Jeff, are here with us today. Before we head into the meat of this segment, I just want to share something with you. Believe it or not, I was fortunate enough to have a psychologist for a client for a while. Mm-hmm. And he retired. I wish he hadn't, but he did. And he specialized in learning and behavioral disorders in children, and treated just about everything you can imagine, from ADHD to other. I share your thoughts about big pharma, but other so-called diagnosed illnesses or diseases, and also things on the autism spectrum. Mm-hmm. He was militantly anti-medication, and he practiced neurofeedback training. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're at all familiar with that. He was vulnerable enough to let me talk with parents of some of the children that he treated and some of the children that he treated. Yeah. I'm not going to try to bill it as something miraculous or any kind of a panacea, but those children especially were so self-aware, so aware of what they had been like, so aware of how much better they were, and so aware of how much better their lives were. So I don't know if that's something you're familiar with or
I am, yeah.
Okay, cool. What I would like you to do, at least to kick off this segment, is to talk about your website and your podcast, Living Undeterred. I think I'm fairly sure how and why that came about. But can you tell us about that and the work you do there?
Yeah, and actually, ironic you said that, because the Living Undeterred podcast has been on, I call it dark mode. So I did it for 3 years, absolutely loved it. But when we launched our app for youth mental wellness, it's called Brighton, by the way. Obviously, you can see where I got that name from, my granddaughter. And we launched it last September. We're in 14 countries. We've got about 1,000 thrivers on the app. We don't call them users because I don't like that word user for obvious reasons. And words matter. So we don't say mental health, we say mental wellness. We're very intentional in everything we do. So our whole approach. So again, the podcast will be resurrected in 2025. After I get some traction with the app. But the idea with the app was to introduce Gen Z, which is about a third of the world's population. So it's 2.56 billion humans, 70 million in America. The idea of mental wellness planning, like we do financial plans and you have diet plans and exercise plans. It seems like we don't have anything like that with mental wellness for young adults. So our app is primarily geared towards 16 to 26 range roughly. So I'd say sophomore, junior, senior high school and above. It's all interactive. It's very engaging, not addicting. And basically, in a nutshell, we aim to empower young adults to self-assess and autonomously build their own mental wellness plan, focusing on 3 areas of optimal mental wellness, and that's health, wealth, and purpose. So I believe if I could be the creator for a day and make a young adult very resilient, I would focus on increasing their confidence level in these 3 areas, health, wealth, and purpose. And, we can come back to this later, but that's kind of the idea behind the app. And so it was very enjoying and fun and quite liberating for me to work on because I'm surrounded by a bunch of young adults. And so they're constantly educating me. And I think I'm 58 years old. So I think the temptation is for us to say, oh, you guys are all messed up. Oh, you guys are on social media too much, or you guys vape too much. And it's like negative. How does that work when my mom and dad told me that stuff? Mm-hmm. It didn't. And so why do we think it's going to work? And so prohibition hasn't worked. The war on drugs hasn't worked. It's all these strategies we've been using for a long time has not been, haven't worked. I think the evidence is pretty clear that, especially with kids, and I would have to argue most adults are mentally worse off now than they were 10 years ago. And we keep doubling down with new labels, double down with new prescriptions. We lead the world in teen antidepressant prescriptions. It's not even close. And I would argue we lead the world in teens that are struggling the most. So there's something broken there. So I didn't want to add to the problem by just creating an app that sent your kid down to see a doctor to get a bottle of Prozac. That's just a drug dealer. And that's not my legacy. So that's a little bit about the app, and I can come back to that later. But, really getting into advocacy, Mark, was the turning point for me. And I can say for my daily routine, things I had to do. But before I get to that, I want to talk about an incident that happened, if it's okay to spend a few minutes on this.
Absolutely. Please do.
The Christmas my wife died, 4 months later, my mom died. So I had this, and it was the day after our 15-year-old cat was put down. So it was like, I had this cloud over me, and I'm playing this pity party. Like, why is death following me around? Why me? Why me? And it's like that Christmas, I was alone in my house. My 2 boys were out with friends. And there was these, I call them the 7 boxes of doom. And I've written about this at length because there's a lesson from this. But they had these 7 boxes sitting there in my living room that I'd been walking past because, they were possessions of my wife and I. And finally, one day on a Friday, I pulled up a chair and I opened up the first box, and it was like this, just pictures of my wedding and my wife and, our first date and the night I proposed to her. And I sat down, my shoulders shrank. I started crying. I went from, as my son says, Dad, you went from living undeterred to living underdeterred. Mm-hmm. It's a little joke in the family. And I'm like, I went from here to here, like quickly. And I opened up the second box, and it was all Seth. And it was all graduation pictures and basketball games I coached him at, and just prom. And so I want Mark in a matter of a couple minutes. I shut my phone off. I slammed my computer shut, and it broke. And that was on a Friday. And Sunday morning, my business partner's wife came over because no one could reach me. And what happened was I sat in my closet I don't remember. I don't remember any. I wasn't drunk. I don't drink, and I wasn't doing any pills or anything. I opened up my safe, and for your listeners that this is a disturbing topic, then I'd suggest maybe a few seconds to put on mute. But I opened up my safe, took my gun out, leaned back on my closet wall, and this is just 2.5 years ago, and I counted down to 3. I got 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3 for the whole weekend. And the scary part about having thoughts of ending your life is that I was so okay with it. I mean, I was so ready. I didn't want to really die. I just didn't want to live. Death wasn't attractive to me, but living was hell. And I didn't do it. And man, am I so grateful I didn't do it, because my life has just blown up since then. And I'm just like in a really good place. But when you look at the abyss, it's like, bring it on. I don't fear anything, man. I can't swear on your show, but I don't fear anything. I really don't. And I've come that close to ending my life. I've lost half my family, but I can honestly tell you at 58, I've rebuilt myself into the greatest position I've ever been in my entire life. And it's a multifaceted, moving target, non-linear, always adding new arrows to the quiver whenever I can. And so meditation daily, 45 minutes a day. I get up at 4:30 every morning. I meditate for 45 minutes on my deck in the dark. I exercise maybe an hour to 2 each day. Nothing dramatic. I'm not like a big muscle guy. I just run on my elliptical. I do light weights. And those are my non-negotiables. I don't watch TV. I don't follow any politics. It's nothing anyone's going to say is going to educate me or change my mind. So I follow people that I end up probably, voting because of this person type thing. But I don't have the filter to follow all this stuff. I'm too likely to see a fake post and believe it's real. I'm too gullible in that standpoint, and I'm not smart enough to figure out what are deep fakes and all that. But anyway, so I work really hard, man. I mean, super hard. And the reason I do this is I never want to go back to that spot in the closet that I walk by every single day. And I look at it and I don't fear that spot. I respect it. I respect the hell out of it. I don't fear death. I respect it. I have a healthy relationship with death. I have a reverence for life, but a respect towards death. And it's going to catch me someday. It's going to get you too, brother. But, it's like in the meantime, I'm going down swinging. It's going to get my best shot every day, and it could be a car wreck, a plane crash. I don't know. I don't even care. But I'm going to live the best life I can. I'm leaving nothing on the table. I'm going to check out of the game and I'm going to say, man, I left it on the court. And that's how I approach my life. But I wasn't that way prior to all this stuff happening. So there is a way for us to become better human beings from the ashes, literally from the ashes. And, that's how I approach life every day. Now, tomorrow I may wake up and feel like crap, and I may need to cancel a podcast, and I need to, I don't know, eat a pizza. I don't know, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I put the oars in the canoe, man, and I don't fight upstream anymore.
I'm going to leave you with this because we have to do one more commercial break. The existential philosopher, Albert Camus, left a loaded revolver in the top drawer of his nightstand because it represented for him every day the choice not to use it. Yeah. I love that.
I love it too, but that's scary for some people. But for me, that's something I would do, but I wouldn't recommend that.
Well, no, I mean,
yeah.
But
I think for, you and me and maybe some other people, I could be okay with that. But I think for a lot of people that may be tough. Like I can go to a bar and I could buy you a drink, Mark, and I can sit right next to you. It doesn't bother me. But for some people that are struggling with alcoholism, they can't do that, Yeah. Tough.
All right. We're going to take a break. I already know the next segment is going to be too short. I'll try to be as concise as I can. So please stay with us. We'll be right back in 3 minutes.
Are you ready for the quantum age?
Humanity's next step in evolution?
Dream Vision 7 Radio Network invites you to the extraordinary platform of evolutionary voices for the quantum age.
Let's explore. Learn more about this upcoming age where we bridge science with spirituality.
Where potentiality meets reality.
Where we take compassion into action.
Our trailblazers and visionaries will ask the whys, the what ifs, while igniting continuous possibility.
Come along with us into an age beyond what we know today, where we can grow together in unity consciousness.
Experience evolutionary voices for the quantum age, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern on DreamVision7Radio.com.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brands, distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dream Vision 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to dreamvision7radio.com.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life from any circumstances a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dream Vision 7 Radio Network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you very much for staying with us. And Jeff, once again, thank you for agreeing to be here with me. I just want to comment on something that you were saying earlier about all of the negative ways in which we have tried to influence the behavior of young people. And as you were talking about those things, I wrote down 2 words: stigma and deprivation. It's almost as if we thought if we put a big enough stigma on there and tried to deprive people, they wouldn't do it. And, you know, to me, that invokes the proverbial forbidden fruit. And if we're telling kids that, and they're going to discover those things on their own, and, you know, I'm also not going to sugarcoat the idea that drugs make you feel good.
Yeah.
That's why they're dangerous.
Yeah.
And so if we take that negative approach, stigma and deprivation, when they discover those things, they're going to think, that's why they didn't want me to know about it. And I want to say one more thing. My sons are older than yours. So when the kid from the University of Maryland who had been recruited by the Celtics in 1986, Len Bias.
That's the reason why I didn't do drugs right there. Him.
Okay.
Yep.
I actually wrote a piece at that time and talked to my boys about it incessantly. And the piece I wrote was called Drugs Kill, Tell Your Children.
Yeah.
So I want to take that to segue to Brighton. And I want the folks who have joined us today to know that Brighton is Brightn.
Yep.
I know that because I've put the app on my phone because I was curious enough about it. So if you would please tell us more about that. And I'm just going to say, because I was so uneducated about it, I love the idea that you've included wealth in there.
Yeah. I definitely want to jump on that, but I want to go back and just to make a quick comment before we jump into the Brighton app. The confusion for young adults is just the word drugs. It's like, what is a drug? I mean, is caffeine, is sugar? I mean, my son had a friend over last night and he was drinking some blast drink, and I looked in the back and it's 77 grams of sugar. And I'm like, but that's not a drug. And alcohol is just paraded around as no big deal. And it's caused more damage than, say, cannabis ever could in our society. And I'm not a cannabis smoker. I'm not defending it, but I'm saying it's just very confusing. There's conflicting signals. Gambling's okay for scratch off tickets, but kids aren't supposed to gamble on their phones on sporting events. And it's like, but you watch Charles Barkley when he does the NBA, they talk about point spreads all the time. And it's like, there's a massive amount of confusion. And then we come in saying, oh, don't do drugs.
Brilliant.
And it's just like, which drugs you talking about, mom and dad?
Yeah.
Which drugs you talking about? Dad drinks beer every night and you drink 4 cups of coffee in the morning. What drugs are you talking about? I think there's not just an hypocrisy, but there's a massive lack of education and just going back to what we mean by drugs, like what type of drugs and why. And this isn't probably going to, but anyway, I don't know if we have enough time for me to even bring up this topic, but nonetheless, I want to get into the app. But yeah, I think there's just some ways we can talk to kids about, when mommy and daddy say drugs, pretty much everybody uses drugs, some capacity. So what do you mean? Illegal drugs, prescription drugs, drugs you can buy at Walmart? What type of drugs are you talking about? It's like, that's, I think, kind of the foundation we have to start with when you're in your family having these conversations with your kids. And don't just say, don't do drugs. What does that mean, Dad? And why do you drink? Why does mom smoke? It's conflicting signals. If you want to start cleaning up your house, start with cleaning up your own house, your own life first, and then go around lecturing your kids how to live a good life. But if you're a train wreck, you're addicted to alcohol and prescription pills and lying and all the other stuff, how in the hell can you ever imagine your kids aren't going to follow that same path? And if they don't, then they're going down a path that they want nothing to do with you anyway, and you don't want that path either.
Well, and that puts you in a position of do as I say, not as I do, which never works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, again, I want to come back to Brighton, and I know you do too. And I want to say one more thing about it. It's interesting to me, the order, health, wealth, and purpose.
Yeah.
I would have imagined purpose might be first, but maybe that's just too big a chunk for kids to bite.
Well, I'll tell you the idea, how it came about. So 2 years ago, I bought an RV and drove around the United States with my 2 boys. I called the Living Undeterred US Tour. So I got a 34-foot, fully loaded Hurricane Thor, brand new, fully wrapped, drove around the United States thinking I was going to raise $1 million, give it to charity, do all this great stuff. But, didn't happen. Nobody really supported me. I got no corporations back me. No, this big billboard driving down the interstate for 95 days. And really, I raised like $35,000. It was kind of embarrassing. I didn't get people helping me, but nonetheless, my kids are like, Dad, this is what living undeterred is all about. You had this big dream. It was a financial disaster, but you're undeterred. And so I was at a KOA in Little Rock, Arkansas, literally in tears going, man, I thought this would generate all this ground swell of people Googling me and saying, God, this guy's amazing. I want to help him. I want to help him, but there's nothing. It's just, I'm like, where are the people that say they care? I'm like the foot soldier. I'm the guy out there doing it. All I need is somebody to back me. I don't need it. I'll do the work. I'll walk 20,000 miles if I have to. So anyway, I'm in a KOA and I'm really frustrated. And I'm a harm reductionist. So like in Iowa, fentanyl test strips are not legal. If my son could have tested his heroin, maybe he could have known that was fentanyl in it. Maybe he wouldn't have done it. Who knows? but he wasn't given that option because of this ridiculous, archaic laws we have here in the state. And, you can't even have safe syringe sites, things like that, that would help those that are struggling live another day. And so I thought to myself, okay, harm reduction is this idea of meeting the addicted where they are, meet them on the streets, meet them in the tent cities, go to the recovery community centers. I've done all that. And I thought, okay, I want to help kids. That's the lane I decided to pick on. Help kids with their mental health. That's what I want to do. Where are kids? They're on their phones.
Yep.
95% of the 2.56 billion Gen Zers in the world own or have access to a smartphone. So if I'm going to do something to change the world, to leave a legacy, I have to do something on their phone. Well, I have no background in apps. I've never done anything like that. So I did what you do with attention deficit. I sold my investment firm. To this day, I don't know what I sold it for because I didn't care. I needed to get out. 34 years of selling IRAs and 401ks, I was done. And took some of the money I made, hired a company in DC, pretty much just like I'm saying, this quick. And they started working on building the app. And now a year later, we launched. And now we've got another almost a year under our belt being out there. And the idea was I wanted to introduce young adults to mental wellness planning, focusing on health, wealth, and purpose. So those are my asset classes. Like asset classes in investing, you have stocks, bonds, and real estate. For me, it's like, let's diversify our mental wellness approach to kids by focusing on encouraging them to increase their knowledge level in these areas, health, wealth, and purpose. So health was easy. Meditation, breath work, exercise, there's 20,000 apps. And the second one actually wasn't that hard either, purpose, because Gen Z lacks meaning and purpose. They're like the most anxious, lost, depressed generation in human history. And they have the more abundance than any generation has ever had. That's the economy that's very difficult to figure out why.
Yep.
But what's the third one? And I'm like, after a while, it's like right in front of me, because I did investments for 34 years. It's a poor relationship with money. So how do we introduce young adults to have a healthy relationship with money? Well, there was two statistics that really validated I was on the right path. One, the number one stressor for older Gen Z, Mark, so 18 to 26, is financial insecurity. Not lack of having money, lack of knowing what to do with it when you get it.
Mm-hmm.
So insecurity. Well, that's what I did. 34 years, I educated people about money.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the universe is like, dude, this is meant for you, And so, and then the other one was 77% of American adults can't get their hand on $1,000 by the end of the day, and live paycheck to paycheck. So are kids getting educated about a healthy relationship with money at home when almost 80% of them are broke? And colleges are teaching about the math, not the emotion, the quantitative, not the qualitative. So it's like the universe just handed me this gift on a platter saying, Jeff, this is yours. Build it. I'm from Iowa, so it's like field of dreams, build it and they'll come.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the voices were doing. And the voices talk a lot to me. And the voices are like, build it, Jeff, just build it. So I will promise you right now, I don't know what I'm doing half the time. I'm doing something. I've got a great team. I will die on this hill. This is the last thing I'll ever do. I'm 58. I will never retire. I don't know why people do want to retire anyway. Life's too beautiful. I don't want to be on a golf course I like scuba diving, but I couldn't do it every day. And that's the lane I'm in, and that's the place I'm at. And I'm honored to tell this share this story with your followers. And I'm adding you as a friend.
Please.
You gave me a safe place to talk today, and I really respect that. I didn't get to ask you a lot of questions, and when I start my podcast, I'll get you back on early and have you as a guest.
And I would have said this later, but I've already recognized this is part one.
Absolutely.
Of our interaction.
Yeah. I listen, Seth and Prudence are right over my shoulder here. I would give anything. Well, I'd give my life to have them have a chance to live, but I can't. I almost gave my life and I wouldn't have brought them back. So what are the lessons in all these stories? It's like, there's a lot of them and we all got them. Right now, you're probably thinking, of lessons and things that happen in your life, in your childhood, and your listeners doing the same thing. And that's why your podcast is so needed. I mean, it's so needed. I mean, we're people. I mean, we're going to get out of this together. No one's going to get out of this by themselves. And we're going to end up someplace together. I'm not religious. I'm very spiritual, extremely connected to the universe. And I like to believe that we're going to all end up somewhere together. Now, what that looks like, I don't know. I'm not going to claim I know. I've not been touched by anything, but this all can't be for nothing, man. It just can't be.
I had two revelations along those lines. One was in 1975 when my grandfather O'Brien died. I was 21 and I went to his wake, and I learned more about that guy from all of his old cronies. He was 80.
I bet.
And I thought, nope, there's no way in the world that Grandpa O'Brien was here just to be gone.
Right.
And when my dad passed away just over 10 years ago, one of the things I feared the most was his passing. And in the late 90s, I had suffered from depression. And I was absolutely positive that when Dad went, I would crash again.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to the emergency clinic where he passed away, the doc came out and said they had tried to resuscitate him. They had to clean him up. He said, "You can go in now." And before I even pulled the curtain back, I knew he was there. I just got goosebumps telling you that. And I thought, what a moron. He didn't go anywhere. He's not going anywhere. So what you're doing with Seth and Prudence behind you is honoring them and honoring them by continuing to go forward. This is so crazy. I told you a little while ago, I had this Akashic reading. You would be, in that context, considered a light bringer. That's what you are. And God bless you for doing the work you do. So again, I want to remind people that the app is called Brighton, Brightn. I have an iPhone. You can certainly find it on there because I did. You could find it for Android devices too, right?
Yeah. It's under Brighton Wellness, I think, if you were to just search it in the App Store. But it is free. But on 9/1, we are going to be rolling out our membership. So it's free right now. But after 9/1, we're going to have some really cool upgrades that people can. And it's like 25 cents a day. It's very, we made this, and we're going to have scholarships available for those families that can't afford the app. But we don't want to turn away anybody. But at the same time, I mean, we have to create some revenue so we can continue doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I love that. And please mention Living Undeterred. Is that still a website that people should?
Yeah, I have livingundeterred.com and livingundeterred.org. But the site that's probably the best right now for the lane I'm in is brightenapp.com. So www.brightenapp.com. We're going to have merchandise coming out, hoodies and shirts and sweats, all with mental health, mental wellness type, motivational stuff. Parents, kids, schools. We've got a college in New York that's signed on with us, which we're excited. So yeah, Mark, I mean, it looks like I'm organized and structured, but I wake up each morning going, what am I going to do today? But I'm going to do something. It's like, I got to keep moving forwards or sideways, but I don't want to go backwards. And if I go backwards, I'm going to give myself some grace.
Yes.
I'm going to give myself some time. I'm going to give myself whatever I need. And then I'll take that 2 steps to make up for the 1 step I took backwards. So I'm not someone that's perfect. I make mistakes every day, but I do learn from them.
Okay. And I'm sorry that we've come to the end here. I'm going to promise everyone who joined us today, and I'm certainly going to promise you, Jeff, we are definitely going to do this again. By virtue of your agreeing to come here, you and I are connected.
Yes.
That's not breakable.
No.
So I very much look forward to being in touch with you again. I thank you. I thank everyone who joined us today. I will be back 2 weeks from today with another show. And again, I promise you, Jeff Johnston will join us again.
Thank you, Mark, very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into The Anxious Voyage, the program dedicated to sharing stories, helping people, and celebrating life. You can see and listen to The Anxious Voyage on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you have a story to tell, or if you know someone who does, please email the host, Mark O'Brien, at mark@o'briencg.com. In the meantime, please remember, the only bad stories are the ones we don't share.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.